Hey there, my friends. This is Dave Wood, and I'm sitting out here walking down the sidewalk out at night in St. George, Utah, just kind of like trying to see the stars. There's not really that clear here because there's tons of city lights and everything like that. I want to do a quick audio talking about the vision of the Kingdom of Elohim, the future. And I want you to pay attention to this because I'm going to teach you, while you're listening to this, how to create more vision than you've ever been able to create in the past. And I'm going to be teaching you, while you're listening this, on how I'm going to do things in a way that actually is going to make sense to everyone. And when you're done paying attention to this, here's what's going to happen: is your vision and your ability to see the future in a lot of detail and a lot of enhanced strategies of, for example, just creating, it's going to go massively up. And the reason I could say that is because I've been a powerful creator my entire life, starting from the time that I was very young. I was always probably the most creative kid around in school. I always had big visions for the future. I remember when I was a kid, I was sitting there in talking to one of these school counselors that was trying to tell me what kind of job I had to be in because of my skills. And, of course, I wasn't paying attention to the test, and I thought it was stupid, so it put me something like a janitor or something like that. It was really funny. And then I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that. And he's like, well, what do you want to be? And I said, well, I'm going to be a millionaire and drive a Ferrari. I think I was 6 or 7 years old. I was a really young kid. And, it's really interesting that I've had visions my whole life. In fact, one time I was asking God who my wife was going to be when I was 8 years old. I just gotten baptized. I'd gotten the gift of the Holy Spirit. And I was like, God, who's my wife going to be? Right? And then I saw this tunnel of light, and I saw this face of this woman that I met when I was 30 years old in Costa Rica. And so, I've always had this kind of ability to see prophetic vision for the future and to see vision for other people. In fact, if you go back and you look at all the people that went to my old events in the old company that I was building, and you just ask them, hey, when David Wood was in his prime, how good was he at vision? Those people are going to tell you, okay? Those people are going to tell you, dude, Dave Wood has vision better than any person you've ever met in your life. He just needs the right environment. People have seen me walk into a room of people. I go in there, I talk for an hour, then everybody just starts getting new jobs. Everybody changes their careers. And then people starting their own businesses. Even years later, we were calling people that we had worked with in these early years. And I got on the phone with so many people I couldn't tell you, who had literally started multi-million-dollar companies and doing very well from products that I released that because I taught something in a new and a different kind of way. I taught something in a new and different kind of way. In fact, all the people that still got around that culture and got around that organization build systems differently. They build funnels differently. They do email campaigns differently, right? Their entire lives are different, and their entire lives are better. So I have this ability to cast vision that's way beyond what most people do. And I can teach the other people how to do it, is my point. It's not that I'm the only one that can do it. It's that I have the ability to, when my brother Will told me one time that I have this ability, I can't remember what he called it. He's there's people that they just their presence creates vision in people, and you're one of those, right? And so I've always had vision, and they always happen. And usually when I start off on a vision, what happens is that people don't buy into it very much. They don't make a decision to get in. They don't make a decision to buy. They don't make a decision to align with it. And it takes me a little while to get a few people really engaged in the vision and really focused on it as a collective group, because I start presenting the vision to people in exponentially increasing numbers. And then what happens is there's this kind of quantum mechanical energy that happens. There's a quantum mechanical energy that happens where when lots of people are focused on the same vision, the ability to manifest that vision is exponentially greater than just one person. It comes from the law of synergy. I read about this years ago in Stephen Covey's Highly Effective People, where it's you have one pole, right? and construction, and then you put a second pole on it, and you don't just double the force. It multiplies it by like 3, it multiplies it by like 5, and it doesn't just double, it massively exponentially compounds just by adding two poles rather than one. It's like 3 times or 5 times greater force or something like that. So there's this force alignment that comes physically from alignment, and there's a greater spiritual force of alignment that happens, and this is the manner in which that you create vision. Let me explain what I learned a long time ago. So I learned a long time ago from Bill Britt, who was my favorite Amway speaker I ever heard, I think, because he had the biggest organization. I don't know, Brad Duncan was up there. I probably related to Brad Duncan a little bit more because he was more like my personality. I thought he was funnier. I thought he was actually much funnier than Bill Britt, because Bill Britt was more serious, and Brad Duncan, he was more funny. He was also very serious, right? And man, they were both cocky, I'll tell you that, those two. But Bill Britt had a reason. I mean, he had, I think, like 2 million people in his team or something like that, like 2 million customers down line, something like that. I mean, that's a lot of customers to have in an organization. Can you even imagine that? Can you even imagine what it would be like to lead an organization of 2 million people? Now, here's the thing with what he did, right, when he's growing that organization. What he said is the way that you get what you want to get is you want to speak the vision 5 nights a week, right, following the 8 core steps, and then he said 3 powers: unity, submission, and the spoken word. Submission keeps you in alignment with, for example, the company, the upline, the products, whatever, if you're doing network marketing. And it's important that, particularly with men and women, that everybody needs to have some sort of submission to somebody in addition to, their God. You say, well, why is that? Because if they're not in submission to anybody, they essentially become a law unto themselves with no checks and balances. And this is dangerous for anybody, no matter who they are. Because if nobody's there to tell you, hey, David, you're getting prideful, or hey, Aaron, or hey, Dave, or hey, Bill, or hey, Fred, or hey, Susan, you're getting prideful, then how do you even know that you're getting prideful if you're trying to see yourself? Now, there's certain people that have an ability to see themselves and their own behavior a little bit more. We're not talking about that. We're just talking about unity. Unity is more than one person. Submission, okay, is, for example, you have an upline, you stay in submission. You have a pastor of a church, you stay in submission. You have a rabbi, you stay in submission. You have a Mormon bishop, you stay in submission, right? You have a president of the United States. So, for example, Donald Trump is the president right now, so I stay in submission because, I have a president of the United States. I'm not the current president of the United States. I've got one, right? So there's power in unity, there's power in submission, there's power in the spoken word. So here's the steps. What you got to do is, first you got to get a model working. And the model that this is going in the vision. I'm going to teach you how to cast so much vision. Like, you're going to be so much better at casting vision just listen to this audio. I encourage you to listen to this 3, 4, 5 times, because it's really going to help you understand what I'm doing, and it's really going to help you understand how you can really get to the next level in your life and the next level in your business. So in any case, unity and submission, and then the spoken word. Now, here's the thing. Where does it start? It starts with the unity, submission, and spoken word. And what's the starting? First, before you really go speak the vision 5 nights a week, you really need to go get some kind of success story, some kind of first circle. You have to have a model. Otherwise, the whole formula doesn't work. If the thing that breaks down in this formula is not the formula that he's spoken, it's that it's missing the first circle. So, for example, if you're doing network marketing, right, you got to get something working before you go bring it to people that actually makes sense, right? And I'm talking about, like, you got to go get some clients somehow, like clients that want the products. And if you can't do that in that company, you probably either need different training, or the products have something missing in them, because it's very easy to get customers for anything. I joined a company the other week, and I got like 10 customers in like 2 days or something like that. It was the easiest thing I've ever done. And so, and I'll go do that again with this other thing I'm promoting too. And then I'm going to go, get a little bit of a model working. And then once I've got a model and once I've got some kind of a franchise type thing, then what I do, then I lay it on, because all of a sudden when I've got something working, everybody knows what? Everybody knows Dave Wood's back. See, if I just go try to tell everybody I've got it working, people have said this to me a lot. They said, like, why don't you stop saying what you're going to do? And you just do it, And for a while, I think I was a little bit dull of hearing. And the reality is that I have a little bit of a different way at the same time, where I got to say what I'm going to do, 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 and then it actually happens. Why? Well, let me explain how I actually created my first company, Empower Network. How did I do it? I created it literally I spoke the whole thing into existence. I refused to give up. I refused to budge. I refused to not start on time. And at the last possible second, in the greatest story ever told, we figured it out, and then we went on, we did a couple $100 million. And that was my first real big success. But I created that entire thing by speaking to crowds of people. And then from the speaking, literally all the people that I needed who could do parts that I couldn't do manifested out of nothing. Like a 2019 real deal miracle. Like just literally, I'm speaking it into existence. I'm speaking it into existence. I'm speaking it into existence. And that happened because all the resources and all the spiritual energy and all the electricity and all of the positive intentions were there to attract the people around me, that I wanted to attract, right? And they just they instantly showed up. At the last possible second, they showed up. At the only time they could show up, they showed up. And they did it in the greatest story ever told. And so this is in that company. I've done that before, and I've done that basically in everything that I've done, because I learned how to do that from who? From the same guy, Bill Britt, Brad Duncan, those Amway guys taught me how to do it. So I saw them do it, and because I saw them do it, and I went to their meetings, and I saw how they spoke life into people, and then I modeled it. What happened is I gained the authority and the ability, okay, to speak that same kind of life, and to speak that same kind of power, and to speak that same kind of honor, and to speak that same kind of grace, and to speak that same kind of excitement into people. And I was actually much better at getting people excited than those guys were in a lot of ways. Now, I was not better at culture. I was good at culture, but they had some parts of culture that I just didn't have, right? So I don't think that I was better at culture, but we had the best culture ever in our niche, right? And there's a reason for that, right? So unity. So how did unity come about? Well, unity came about because I was speaking a vision, and then I couldn't do it alone, essentially. And there was a couple of people that were presented in front of me that could have been great additions to the team. And then one of them kind of came in with a lot of energy, and he had a similar kind of work ethic to what I had. And that's why I actually worked with that guy, because his work ethic was the same as my work ethic, right? His work ethic is the same as my work ethic. His work ethic was the same as my work ethic, right? This dude. And so he came in with the same kind of work ethic, and he's like, I never met somebody that works as hard other than Dave Wood, right? So that's how he was. And then what happened is that the two became one, unity, and then the one became multiplications and additions and teams and leaders, because all of a sudden two of us got together, and with two people together casting the same vision, it got exponentially more powerful, right? So this is no different really than, for example, if you think about the Savior Jesus, right? The Savior Jesus, he spoke vision into people. And his vision was really powerful. And his commands were very specific. I imagine actually his vision he worked on basically all his life. mapped out the exact ministry, planned every second of it. And then once he had the whole thing done and he had all the principles done and he was ready, then God sent him on his way, and then he walked up, said to his first disciple, "Follow me, and I'll make you fishers of men." Now, something that he had right at that moment, right, here's what I'm going to tell you. Whatever he did at that moment, had he have done it a day before, a week before, a month before, it wouldn't have worked the same. You say, well, why is that? Right? Why is that? Why couldn't he have done it? Why couldn't he have done it, a different way, a different time, and, had the same thing work? Because the vision wasn't ready and the door wasn't opened yet to begin. He was something like 33 years old when he, embarked on his ministry. And you could imagine him trained from his youth, that he was prepared by his father, that he was prepared by his community, that God prepared him, that he had ministering of angels, that he had all sorts of studies. He could have gone, for example, and studied out with Buddhist monks, came back to Jerusalem later. There's actually records of that somewhere, of that happening. But so he could have studied with Buddhists. He could have gone and he could have studied the other great world religions. He could have just stayed home in Jerusalem and just prepared there. It was a very holy place then, in particular. It still is today, but just, it's still holy today, right? So the point is, though, I think, in my opinion, they were a lot more righteous back then, though. I think everybody would agree with that. That's just true with everybody, right? Everybody's more righteous, basically. Maybe people were more evil, too. I don't know. They were more righteous, for sure. So in any case, so he prepares. So if you think that happened without any preparation, he was like 30 years old or something like that. You have to go look it up. And all of a sudden, it's like, well, this just comes out of nowhere. All that says in the New Testament about Jesus was, from the time he was 12 till the time that he's about 30, I think there's about 18 years missing. And then he just starts his ministry, right? So there's this giant gap of well, what happened? Where was he? Nobody knows. But I'll tell you this, right? And I could probably ask and get revelation on it. I bet he went all over the place, to be honest with you. But what I'll tell you he was doing was he was disciplining his mind, disciplining his spirit, disciplining his heart, preparing himself for, kind of the awful end that he went through. No, you could be certain that he knew about that the entire time. And that right up until the time that he died, he executed on his plan perfectly. That's what you can expect with somebody like Jesus, right? Because Jesus was perfect. And what people don't understand is they're like, wow, he did a lot in 3 years. Look what Jesus did. I've had people say things like this with me. They're like, well, look what Jesus did. Look how fast it grew. Look at all this stuff. And I'm like, dude, first of all, yes, I'm a little older than Jesus was when he started his ministry. This is fine, right? And in a way, I've been prepared my entire life and everything like this. However, we were starting from two different places, right? So it's not, if I had started doing what I'm doing now, for example, when there was 5,000 people in Empower Network, and then I had a vision and told everybody that, God told me I'm the Messiah David and all this stuff. Well, what would happen is that at the peak, because I'm making a lot of money, because my name is David, because I have a giant kingdom, a lot of people actually would have just believed it and we would have just gone and tested it all out, right? And there'd be some people that wouldn't believe, and there'd probably be schisms created and stuff like this and there and stuff like that. But it would be totally differently received at the right time versus when it's not time yet. And this is my point. So how do you build vision? I'm sharing this with you to understand that, for example, with Empower, I had a vision for Empower, and it took a year for that vision to manifest, right? Because whatever I need manifests in my life, right? When I need it, what I need manifests 100% of the time. And if that thing I'm manifesting is prosperity at that moment, it's prosperity at that moment. If it's not prosperity big enough at that moment, then it's not prosperity big enough at that moment yet. However, whatever I need is what shows up. You say, what do I mean? Well, sometimes you need to get kicked in the butt. Sometimes you need to surrender your ego. Sometimes you need to let go of your way, like your way about being right about everything all the time, for example. Sometimes we all need to go and search through our stuff and just be like, I'm ready to submit this whole vision of mine to God. And then what happens from the time that you actually submit, there's usually a gathering phase, and the gathering phase is like, for example, you're gathering spiritual energy. The gathering phase is, for example, you're gathering knowledge. The gathering phase is you're gathering leaders. You're gathering customers. And then you're in this gathering phase, creating the emotional and spiritual energy to attract everybody. And that's kind of like where I am now. Like, I'm starting to have supernatural doors open up everywhere in my life, and people just like showing up at the right time to do the exact right things. Like, I'm talking everywhere in my life, and every area of my life has happened. And that wasn't happening, I don't know, 6 months ago or something like that. And you say, well, why wasn't it? Because it wasn't time yet, and because I wasn't there yet, and because I had a lot of healing to do still. So now what I got going is I got supernatural doors open, and I got people coming my way. I've got people hitting me up. I got people talking to me. I got people asking me questions. I got people starting to believe my message. I got people who are aligning with it. I got people who are like, you know what, I've never seen somebody with a stronger character than Dave Wood over these last 2 years. I got people who told me things like this. And it's like, you just stayed consistent and stayed consistent, and it didn't matter when people told you that it's not going to work. It didn't matter when people told you you're not who you say you are. It didn't matter when people told you that you can't do it. It didn't matter when people turned their back on you. It didn't matter when any of this stuff happened, Dave Wood. You just freaking stayed consistent, like nobody ever stayed consistent with the past with something, even though what you're saying is a little bit wild. So what happens is that with that consistency and with that vision and with that emotional energy and with that power, and with all this, what happens is this. A little rabbit. Hey. Cool. I like the little animals. So what happens is this. You've got this emotional consistency. You've got this spiritual consistency. And then what happens is you're speaking the world into existence. You're speaking it into existence. Hold on, I gotta drink more. And then what happens when you speak it into existence? Well, amazingly, one day you're walking down the road and somebody just walks up to you and they say hello. What's up, man? Yeah, you're one day walking on the road. Somebody rides by on a bicycle and you say hello. And then all of a sudden they're like, hey, what's up? You say, I'm just chilling out. What are you up to? And they're like, I'm just a little bit down. I was just looking for an opportunity, and just kind of like walking around because my wife and I are fighting or like that. And you're just like, you know what? What are you looking for? And they're like, well, I'm looking to make more money. I've been thinking about like, what are the 5 things that you would do, have, or become if time and money were an issue? If you remember, my friends were talking about it. And we just been sitting around dreaming, like drawing out plans on whiteboards in the house and stuff like that, trying to figure out something that's really going to make a giant difference in our lives financially. You say, well, how much of a difference do you want to make? And they're like, $5,000 a month, man. That's it. I want to just give my kids a better life. And then you say, I can help you with that. And they say, really? Yeah. Well, let me ask you this, blah, 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 blah. And then you go through this little process, and all of a sudden, you walk up on the side of the road, you sign up a guy, then you go get his friends, then all of a sudden 5 levels down, the first diamond appears in your company that goes diamond in 16 days. That, my friends, that right there is how you grow things when you're really in a powerful state of spiritual, mental, and emotional manifestation, creation energy. You speak it and you speak it and you speak it and you speak it and you speak it. And then when people turn their backs on you, you speak it. And when people ignore you, you speak it. And when people don't listen to it, you speak it. And then pretty soon you're standing on a stage telling a whole bunch of African American people one day, I have a dream. Thank you, Martin Luther King Jr., for leading the way in that. Right? It's fantastic. My point is that when you speak a vision, and you speak a vision, and you speak a vision into existence, and you speak truth into existence, and you speak peace into existence, and you speak righteousness into existence, right? Check how much time I got left. Man, I got a lot of battery here. I thought it was going to last like, a little bit. These batteries are great on this phone that I'm on. So anyway, you're speaking this thing into existence, like, You're taking all of your emotional heart energy and you're saying, there will be a day when I do X, Y, Z. Like, let me give you an example of how you speak, right? You wanna take the greatest orators in history. When they're speaking vision and when they're rallying people, political people are very good. Pastors are very good. Rabbis are very good. Right? At speaking vision, especially some of those big mega pastors and stuff like that. I mean, those guys have got ministries that do, $100 million a month and stuff like that, some of them. TBN guys or whatever. So anyway, what happens is you're speaking the vision, you're speaking the vision, you're speaking the vision, and you're like walking down the road and you're like, there'll be a day when I'm walking up to the pulpit in Madison Square Garden and everybody is roaring with applause. And I will stand up and I will say to them, a long time ago, I was walking down a road and I was thinking about getting involved in a business and my brother gave me a call. And then I went to this event and I met this guy named Bill Britt. And he taught me to speak your future into existence. And he taught me to speak truth into existence. And he taught me to speak grace into existence. And he said, stand up. And I want you to say it with me. And he said, someday, somehow, some way, Bill Britt. And we all said, somehow, someday, some way, Bill Britt. We will be on the beaches of the world. We will be on the stages of time. I will be in front of thousands and tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions and hundreds of millions and billions of people. There will be a day. Because I believe in you so much that no matter what tries to stop you in your life from getting what you want, it ain't enough. Whatever person comes into your life and they try to tell you, hey brother, I don't believe in you. Look, they can't disbelieve in you enough. It's not, look, the more they do it, the more silly they look. See, I believe in you so much that one day, I believe that you could be in Madison Square Garden. I believe that one day you could be in the White House. I believe that one day you could be in the beaches of the world. I believe one day you can also have a fall from your pride. And you can also have a spiritual awakening. And you can also it's possible, you might get damaged. But here's what I know. I know that you'll recover. How do I know? Because look at me. Things are prospering again. I've got money coming my way again. I've got deals hitting me up left and right again. I've got people hitting me up on the phone again. I've got people gathering around me again. And you know what? There's been times when I've been discouraged in my vision, and it's not about, my thing is not about the White House. I want you to understand this. This is like a little speckle along the way of what I'm going to do. Right? A little speckle along the way. Like something on this little side of the road on my path to where I'm going is stopping by in the White House to set America straight for a few years. Right? It's not going to be the greatest thing that I ever do. It'll be the greatest thing that I ever do up to that point, though. Because the greatest thing America can do, this is for Donald, is make America righteous again. To literally break apart every societal control that has haunted civilization since time began in 4 years. To break every single part of it apart. No matter what it takes, no matter what we got to do, no matter how much work we got to do to muster it, to help America be restored to a land that is balanced. Because it's not balanced right now. I remember what it was like when I was a kid. It was far more balanced in America when I was a kid. Way more. Right? Donald Trump would tell you the same thing. When he was a kid, it was far more balanced. Now, this is not true in all ways, I think. But kids acted better. There's less ADD. You know what I mean? There's less all sorts of stuff that we don't want around today, but it just is there. There's less pollution. You know what I mean? When my dad was a kid, the HIV virus hadn't really taken off. I actually don't even know when that was started, to be honest with you. I think early, 100 years ago or something like that. I don't remember. I'm gonna walk back now. I see an American flag walking back. It's blowing in the wind. It's blowing in the wind. And what happens is sometimes she blows. The wind. But remember, it is not the direction of the wind that determines your destination. It's the set of the sail. So what is my vision for all this stuff that I've been doing? Well, it goes way out there. And I'm not going to be talking about for the next 1,000 trillion years or whatever in this audio in particular, because I've talked about that a lot. And that's where it ends up is heaven. You just say the ultimate vision is everybody in the universe in heaven. That's my vision. Right? Everyone. 100% of everyone. And if we can't do it at first, we can't do it at first. And then there's a little bit while of punishment and all this stuff that I've outlined on my blog and whatever. But 100% of them, 100% of everyone. However, we gotta go back to understand where we are. And we also got to go back and we got to say, what about in the next, 5, 10, 20, 25, 50 years, something like that? Well, the first thing that we've got to do, the first thing that I'm going to do, that I'm working on, is I'm working on helping develop a system to restore people's consciousness to the more kind of primal state that it used to be in a couple thousand years ago. And it's my postulation that people were far more intelligent in ancient Jerusalem than they are today. Not in all ways, I think. I think we've advanced a lot of our ways and stuff. But I even think they were better at things like math and stuff. And I mean, if you look at, for example, how complex the thinking is of the apostles in the New Testament, or how complex the thinking is of Moses. I mean, Moses was far beyond any modern person that you've met in intelligence, other than perhaps the only person that's arisen that's been close to that has been like Joseph Smith, but I don't think he's there, because Moses was more primal, and there was less decay in the genetics of humans, and the brain of human beings has been shrinking for a long time as well. We know that. And there was some other stuff that he was doing. I mean, there's thunderings and lightnings and fire coming down from heavens when he's up on the top of Mount Sinai and all this stuff. My point is that they were far beyond our intelligence. And so there's a saying in my church that goes something along the lines of intelligence is pure, pure knowledge and pure truth. And if you gain so much intelligence in this world, it goes with you in the world to come. It's one of the things that goes with you is your intelligence. So you want to gain as much intelligence as you possibly can. And I have been doing a bunch of stuff in the background, and I've been working with people and stuff like this on helping people in kind of a close-knit circle to create massive supernatural change very quickly through technology that I've got. And it's working. You know what I mean? I went out and was trying to do miracles and stuff like that before I really knew what I was doing, which is fine because you're not really doing the miracles. I want to be really clear about that. When you're doing miracles, God's doing them. So if you understand that, it's actually very easy with agreement between more than one person under the right environment, under the right spiritual energy, to have supernatural miracles happening left and right. This is fundamentally kind of what used to happen at my events when I'd be like sitting there talking at an Empower Network event and somebody would get up out of a wheelchair. That happened actually several times. For example, Kathleen Skaggs, I think she was in a wheelchair for like 10 years or something like that. And then she literally got up and she walked out of that wheelchair for the first time that she had ever walked in like 10 years. So I've always had a lot of faith, and other people around me I've always attracted people who have a lot of faith in humanity. And the reason I have a lot of faith in humanity is because when I talk about this stuff in society that I think is just messed up, I'm not saying the people in society are doing bad on purpose. They're not. I'm saying that the system of society itself is diseased. And at the roots of disease, there's things that we don't even want to mention and we don't even want to talk about that lurk behind people's shadows, right? Let me give you some examples of some phenomena that are going to come up. Okay, so this is basically, I went through a thing very early, very early after I'd had my initial spiritual awakening. Okay, I went through this phase where I wasn't ready to really go out there and create followers because my heart wasn't right and my mind wasn't right. And then I went and I did it anyway, and I didn't really go about doing it the right way because I didn't go to them with a plan, for example, on here's the plan of exactly what we're going to do. And we kind of started building the plan together, and I hadn't developed myself enough to really understand how to create the kind of change in people that we both wanted to create, and not have anything that could whiplash on them or anything like that from it in the future, right? So I hadn't really figured that out yet. And I have figured that out, and I'm still in the process of mastering like an initial formula that I've got that has been very successful in liberating people from all sorts of things. Personality disorders, victimhood, And with that kind of stuff, I had to get out of that myself first, you know what I mean? I'll tell you something. If Dave Wood can recover from the way I couldn't communicate a message, the way my brain wasn't clear, the way I was speaking and my speech was convoluted, it was like all over the place. You know what I mean? And I mean, I had scar tissue all over my skin. You know what I mean? That's like dissolved now. And now my skin looks like way younger than it ever has. And by the way, people do say that when I don't look that great on my videos because I don't have good light. But people say this to me all the time. They're like, you look way, way, way younger in person than you do on video. And they're like, you look way younger than you did before. I've had people tell me that a lot. Okay. So like, I had to discover that my skin has no scar tissue now. You know what I mean? My victimhood is gone. I'm back in a prospering place. My brain is working better than it's ever worked. My heart is feeling better than it's ever felt. I've got supernatural doorways open to me. So my point is that I broke out of something that is way more of a complex thing to heal from than anybody else that I've ever known that's ever had to heal from anything in their life. Now, I don't think that this is the only thing that's this complex to heal from, and I think that there's a lot of other people that haven't healed. For example, I got a friend who has a brother. His brother went to prison a long time ago. In prison, he hung himself, and he's been brain damaged his entire life from hanging himself in prison, this guy. Right? So somebody like that, his brain could heal too. It might take a while. It might take 5 years. It might take 10 years. But the fact is, his brain could be healed. Right? His brain could be healed. And I've had people that have had all sorts of ailments come to me and that are gone, you know. So I'm starting to build a story, and I'm doing it without really anybody knowing what I'm doing. And you say, well, why not? Well, it's because, right, I don't want to particularly bring my private followers out in front of this old crowd of people that don't care about what I'm saying. It's like casting, at the moment, it's like casting pearls before swine, because this is how people have acted toward me. And so that's not where I'm at right now. I'm out here building something new, and I'm out here doing something different. In addition to that, I've got this network marketing thing going, and I'm just starting to do it. I haven't really messed around. But I'm just getting familiar with it and getting kind of reintegrated back into the industry, network marketing. And then I've got my ministry at the Kingdom of Elohim working on stuff like this. So where's the Kingdom of Elohim going? Well, what I'm going to do is, let me explain it to you. I'm not going to tell you my plans. I'm just going to do it. But what I'm going to do is I'm gathering some support, some stories, some evidences and things like this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come out of nowhere, right? When nobody's thinking about it, I'm going to do something wild, right? I won't tell you what. Leave you all wondering. But I'll come out of nowhere, do something wild. Because the reality is that I'm now in a place where it makes sense for people to start believing in me. I'm like just there, right? To where I could sit down with somebody in 4 hours and do more change with them in 4 hours than they've ever gotten in 10 years, you know. And it's up to them to integrate that change in the right way. I give them instructions on how to do it. But I've been working on that and working on that and working on that and working on that and working on that, because what I'm doing is I'm working on myself. Been rebuilding my cognitive systems, been rebuilding my personality, been rebuilding my ability to communicate my messages, been rebuilding my intelligence, I've been rebuilding my faith, I've been rebuilding my power, I've been rebuilding from the inside out. So when I got all these people that in the past have come around me, they're like, oh, they're laughing behind the mountain. You know, they laughed at frickin' Brad Wolgamott too before he went double diamond in Amway. They laughed at Bill Britt too before Bill Britt was a Crown Ambassador in Amway. They laughed at me before I was, you know, making $500,000 in Power Network. They laughed at me, you know. And here's the thing. They thought over and over and over and over and over again that I wouldn't survive. You know what I mean? That's what they thought. And when people think those things, I just kind of laugh and I chuckle in my heart. And I say, you know what these people don't know is they don't know the real Dave Wood. You know, I was talking the other day to a good old buddy of mine, Chris Jones, back and forth on a little Facebook conversation. You know, I haven't talked to him in a while, and we were chit-chatting and stuff like that, and I just wanted to really see how he's doing, but he responds, so I evoked a response out of him, you know, which is hilarious because I haven't heard from him for forever, and I've hit him up like a bunch of times here. I know he just sees my messages and ignores them. This is funny. I think it's very funny. But the reality is that I hit him up, and I was like, you know, Now, I won't tell you what I said. It's on his wall somewhere. You have to go search his wall. Why not? Oh man, I love changing stories in the middle of open loops and stuff while I'm walking out at night under the stars. The stars are shining, the bugs are singing, there's trees. It's fantastic. So there was a time when I had nothing. There was a time when everybody left me. There was a time when my family left me. There was a time when I lost my businesses. There was a time when, by all medical means, I should have died 50 times over. And more. It was awful what had happened. There was a time. And at the end of the day, I stand here walking on the ground with my 2 feet touching the floor, under the stars of the sky, and I say, I have survived. And even this is a testament to myself and my tenacity and my irrefusable, I'm impenetrable to people's nonsense. It bounces off of me like water off of a duck's back. I remember I was sitting there with Les Brown at a Vic Strisshouse event over in Hawaii. And I'm sitting here with Les Brown, and, you know, he's saying, like, he used to have genetic disease. You know? And he used to just walk around and say things like, my disease is eradicated in the name of Jesus, right? I just like walk around and walk around and walk around and walk around. And from his mind, he regenerated his biology. From his faith, he regenerated his biology. From his words, he regenerated his biology. Right? And see, that's the kind of man that you've got to be if you want to survive. Because weird things are coming, I'll tell you that. If you think what's happened to me is weird, imagining that happening, something like that happening all over society at the same time, and that's about what's going to go on. Because people need to wake up, and people are not willing to wake up. They're not willing to put aside their pride. They're not willing to put aside their huge ego and to say, you know what? Maybe there is an actual, legitimate, modern, like, thing going on with Dave Wood here, and maybe I should pay attention to it. Maybe Dave Wood is a prophet, and I've just been freaking in my own self-denial and in my own nonsense and in my own pride of my power. And because I haven't taken action, and because I haven't reached out, and because I haven't said, how can I help? Maybe there's a lot of darkness that has happened in the land because of my pride and my power, and I'm not willing to go through that risk of understanding the negative karma that will come from the universe for that, for me in the future, by not honoring Dave Wood. I'm not willing to not do that. I'm not willing to walk in a life where I'm not going to honor the person that helped me to create all these businesses that I've created and that helped me to learn all these strategies that I've learned. I'm not willing to dishonor my friends anymore. But it's not just me. I'm not the issue. This is what I want you to understand. For this crowd of people, it's a major issue of karma. Okay? And I'm going to tell you, just point flat, if this crowd of people doesn't repent, there's going to be some massive destruction that's going to come upon this part of the economy. And it's not going to be from anything I do. It's going to be from karma. Okay? It's going to be from karma for not listening to the prophet. It's going to be from karma from talking bad behind my back. It's going to be karma. Like when the kids cast a stone, I think Elijah the prophet or whatever, and then he, you know, what happened is that 2 she-bears jumped out of the wilderness and ate like 42 kids in the Old Testament. I've said that story before, right? The reality is that there's going to be a point in time when God is going to get angry and he's going to slam down. And it is what it is. And there ain't nobody around, if God wants to slam down, that can stop him from doing that. Only repentance, because then he stops it. That's the key. He stops it from the repentance. You repent, which means change, and then he stops it. But this is not about that. This is not about the darkness. This is not about the past. This is not about that. I'm just pointing it out to you that I have survived no matter what anybody has said, no matter what anybody has criticized me, no matter what anybody has thrown against me, no matter what armies people have pitted against me, no matter what backbiting has gone on behind my back, no matter what's happened, I have survived. And I'm here to bring you a story. I'm here to bring you a story of healing. I'm here to bring you a story of hope. I'm here to bring you a story of power. I'm here to bring you a story of restoration. I'm here to bring you a story of greatness. I'm here to bring you a story of the greatest vision that has ever walked into the face of the land, in any land on the face of the earth. And what's that? That story is the kingdom of Elohim. It starts out with prophecy, and it ends in heaven. Together, we will shut down the central banks. Now, we're not necessarily going to shut them down. I'm not going to say that, okay? We're not going to take them out of business or anything like that. But we're going to shut down the central bankers' sadistic control over society. We're going to eliminate it completely. I'm sitting here by a doorway to a dental clinic. I got to sit down for a bit. Ugh. We're going to eliminate it completely. We're going to wipe out income tax altogether. Replace it with an excise tax. We're going to get rid of this giant, overfat, overspending, nonsensical, childish, bratty government and replace it with something that actually runs efficiently. Something that's ran by the people. We're going to break apart the strongholds and the dark traps and the dark spirits and the dark energy over society, and we're going to eradicate the dark energy from the face of the earth. Now, I'm not talking about eradicating people. I want to be real clear about that. We're going to build churches. We're going to build synagogues. We're going to build temples. We're going to build cities. We're going to build states. We're going to build nations. We will build the kingdom system, an international system that operates in kingdom law that connects all the nations of the earth together as one kingdom. A kingdom system that creates separation and it creates balances and it creates cleanliness in the way that government can actually operate, because the kingdom is over the government. We're going to create a system to where everything in the government is oriented around prosperity in the form of helping people win. And if it can't do that, there's a point in time at which that government gets replaced by something else that's not so stupid. We're going to build technology that will keep America safe and will keep the world safe and will keep Jerusalem safe and will keep our space around the earth safe, and that will travel to other worlds. We'll build technology that will travel to the stars. We'll build technology that completely erases aging and death and sorrow and pain. We're going to build technology that's so powerful that it can open up. I still got a lot of battery left here. Holy smokes. We're going to build technology that's so powerful. Well, I'm not going to talk about all the things it's going to do. See, when people are free, here's what happens. When people are free, people do things in a totally new way. America used to be a land where people were free. Now, we live in this society where we got, on one hand, we got these two giant political parties. Let me explain what the problem with the party system is. The problem with the party system that we've got is that there's only two parties. And they really don't represent what everybody thinks. Everybody just kind of picks one party or the other party because these are the ones they see on TV. But even the political system, with even all these parties and everything like this, each side, except for Donald Trump, since I've been alive, all that either side has done is gigantically increase the government. Now, there's certain ways in which the government is, you could say it's more in debt now, as there's the deficit is up. But the actual prosperity of the nation is better than it's been for a long time because everybody's confident in what's going on. However, we got some major issues. We got a piling, growing bucket of debt. We're rushing. The value of our spending dollar is going down. So because of that, people are having to work more and more just to get ahead. Jobs are up, but here's the problem, is that people aren't making as much income as they used to make in very early America. Relatively, we're talking about what do you mean? Well, they used to be able to buy more stuff with the money that they made. So even if they made less money, for example, because there was less money around, the value of the money was way higher, and you say, well, why was it higher? It was higher because the original Constitution had a gold and silver backed currency where you could take $1 of your money and trade it for $1 in gold. And if you look at inflation charts from 1776 or so, right up until when the year Constitution was ratified, right up until the central bankers came into existence, there's like virtually no inflation in North America. There was inflation and deflation. They both happened. But they happened in steady waves as the value of the hard assets was going up and down. See, Abraham was rich in the ways of gold and silver and camels and sheep and horses and all this stuff. He was rich in real assets, real animals, real commodities is what he was rich in. Right? If you look at the wealth of the ancients, it was all commodities. Right? It was commodities, real estate, right? And then they had other things. They had technology. They had all this stuff. But really, the earliest wealth that people created, it was hard assets, right? It was hard minerals, right? And so Abraham, for example, was very, 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 very wealthy in terms of gold and silver and asses and she-goats and whatever else he had, right? Whatever the things were at the time. If you look at David in the Old Testament, David, and I will tell you something that it will take me a while. It might not take me that long, to be honest with you, but it might take me a little bit, right? David was like 80 Bill Gates. If you look at the money that was actually counted and the assets that were actually counted in his books about his wealth, he was like 80 of where Bill Gates has been for a while. Hold on, I gotta drink some water. And that would include like a lot more money also than Jeff Bezos currently has. So how is it possible for a guy in ancient Jerusalem with no modern technology, with way less people on the earth, how is it even possible for him to be more wealthy than Jeff Bezos, for example? Well, because they were prophets, they were kings, and everything that they did were based on the real principles of wealth that exist in the world today. So there was real principles of wealth that existed from the foundation of the world. And those principles of wealth are, I mean, it starts off with, what was man put here to do? He was put here to, multiply and replenish the earth. He was put on in the Garden of Eden to dress it and to keep it, right? Eve was put there to be his helpmate, so that means that he was involved in doing things like, for example, digging, right? He's involved in doing things like digging. He was involved in doing things that were like, digging, building, carpentry perhaps, like stuff that he did with his hands, you know what I mean? And then later, I'm sure he built systems in the Garden of Eden and had other people doing stuff for him because, like I've said, I believe that they were there for a very long time in the Garden of Eden. You can think what you want. But here's the thing, is what they did was they built real tangible wealth and real tangible assets and real tangible relationships. And if you look at, for example, how Abraham treated people in the Torah, Abraham was very kind and loving and gentle, and he's actually a very much like Gabriel Cousins is. If you go down to the Tree of Life Rejuvenation Center, actually Gabriel Cousins had Abraham appear to him and had essentially transferred his essence to Gabriel Cousins years ago. And I'll tell you that Gabriel is literally Abraham. I'm sure he knows that too. He might not know that, I don't know. But he's literally Abraham. And so, what's Gabriel do? Well, he's got a business there, for example. I think his going rate last time I checked was like $500 an hour. People see him in hour chunks scheduled all for the day. He's got an assistant. He does clinical practice. He does real tangible things that help people and builds real long-lasting, sustainable relationships and real systems that continue to power his business for a very long time in the future. And real marketing strategies that continue to scale out his business. And it all promotes natural things of the earth, for example. And he's got a really profitable, debt-free model out there, I'm certain. But I've not asked him a lot of questions about that because it's none of my business. If you look at what Jeff Bezos is doing, why is Jeff Bezos' model a better business model than what else is out there? Well, first thing it's decentralized. See, he's Jewish. The best systems for generally for building something, there's good centralized models, there's also good decentralized models. And sometimes a system is a little bit of a combination of both. Like, so for example, Facebook is more of a centralized model. And Amazon has a central and a decentral model. So in other words, they have this central thing, which is, they have their store where you just buy products. And then as they're building technology to do stuff, they're also building technology in a way that they can give that technology to clients in the future, and they can sell that technology. So everything that they have that they're building from themselves, they then build as an asset, a technology asset, right? They then build as a technology asset, and those technology assets continue to pay them in other forms, because as they're building new kinds of technology and new kinds of server hardware and all this stuff that they specialize in particularly. But they're starting to get specialized in kind of everything at this point, right? And I have no idea what's coming down the pipes on that because I've not been paying attention to his updates and stuff like that as of late. But the reality is that the reason why he's growing so much wealth is because he's doing things that are selling, real tangible things, getting people access to real commodities, building real relationships, and he's doing things in a way that's very congruent and in harmony with Torah, right? Selling real products that are of, for example, high quality at low value, low price. So high quality, high value, low price, right? And in a way that attracts who? In a way that speaks to the masses, right? So if you look at, for example, what is the greatest marketing message that has ever existed on the face of the earth? The best one, what do you think? People would say a lot of things, but really probably the best that's out there is just the law through the Savior Jesus. right? And then there's some other really good ones, the religious marketing messages. For example, my church has got the Book of Mormon. And the Book of Mormon, I mean, they've gotten so many copies out of it, and they literally give it away for free, right? They don't charge for it. They just deliver it for free pretty much anywhere in the world. If they can, if the country allows them to send stuff, which not all of them do. So they respect the rules. But you're talking about marketing messages that have not just created a message that got out there, which is what most people do. They've created a message that went out there and it created change, and that change that it created was permanent. So what's the value of, for example, a prophet? Okay. Well, I could explain technically a lot about how prophecies work and how prophets work and all this stuff. It's very valuable for people to understand. But the reality is that I don't want to focus on that. When I'm talking about the value of a prophet, there's lots of value in it. The value of it is that the prophet is having a message of the greatest vision, which is going to be from the Father. It's going to be from the Father when a prophet speaks, if it's a real prophet. And, so this prophet's going to have a particular message. And because it's not his own vision, because he's in submission to the vision, the vision kind of interacts with the vision of that prophet, is what I believe. And then maybe the prophet asks God to do something, and then maybe he does it. Or maybe God just reveals something that he's already going to do. But what happens is, because God calls the prophets, and he puts a vision into their hearts, and he puts a vision in their minds, and he puts a energy in their souls on how to accomplish it, then what happens is now he delivers on his promise. And when he delivers on his promise, there's results. And when there's results from the works of the prophet, they kind of get included in. And what happens is, a bunch of other people then start believing in those messages, and they start believing in those words. From the writings is actually the way that they do it. I mean, God told me a long time ago that the key to rebuilding my life the way that I want it is writing. I think for a while I wasn't really focused on writing things that my target market, for example, wanted to hear about, because my target market from before, I mean, they just want to make a bunch of money on the internet. That's all they care about. They don't really care, pretty much as long as it's getting them leads and sales, they care about it in that target market. That's all they care about. If you're not talking about those things, then what happens is that target market just stops paying attention to you, because they want to focus on schemes predominantly. But this is not the same of all target markets, and it's not the same of all people. And this is just, there's a balance here, and I very much love that target market, because they're very good people majority of the time, I think. But I also think that they're very shallow in a lot of ways. And, I've been there. I've been shallow in the past. I mean, who else has been in some way? I don't really think I've ever been really that shallow, to be honest. But I think there's a lot of people that are very shallow. It's like the love of their hearts is waxed cold. And somebody needs to say, wake up, dude, and stop treating people like that. Wake up and start treating people with respect and with honor. You know what I mean? It's not just about $1. It's not just about a commission. It's about a human being. It's about a person who you promise to help do something, and you're not doing it. And the reality is, sorry, I know, a little tense. The reality is this, is that there's a certain point at which a vision starts catching energy, and a vision starts catching authority, and a vision starts catching the collective belief of humanity. And people start gathering around the visionary. And people start asking, what can I do to help? And people start asking, how can we serve? And people wake up and they have their own problems eradicated, because the circle's working, because the model's actually working. And then what happens is more and more and more people gather together. And then what happens is the crowds grow and 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 the crowds grow, and then they get bigger and then they get bigger, then everybody's making more money, then everybody's prospered, and then right around then you got to ask yourself, hey, how are we doing in our hearts? Because we want to make sure that we're still here staying humble 5 years from now. Are we doing okay? You check, right? And you always ask that question. Because you don't want to get there and then have to go through some stuff that a lot of us have gone through the first time, right? But the crowds are growing and the vision's getting more beautiful. And then people start to believe. And then people start to get together and they start to gather. And then people start to share strategies with each other. And then people start to put things together in a way that's congruent with them and the people around them and their family. And then people, they align supernaturally into this vision that it's like the vision itself is not even from them. It's like they're just walking in this vision where it's like supernatural gateways are opening up to everybody listening to this audio. Because the reality is that, let me tell you something about yourself. You have the capacity to walk in greatness. You have the ability to do wonderful things. Whatever you have done in the past, as long as you believe in yourself and stay true to yourself and your path, whatever you've done in your past, as long as you're in alignment with your higher power and you stay true to yourself, ain't got nothing on what you've done, what you can do in the future. It ain't got nothing. It ain't got a fraction of zero on what you can do in the future if you stay true to yourself. If you stay true to the source that God put into your heart. You know, this last year, I have been literally ashamed of my old friends. Like, ashamed of them. Ashamed of people who I helped make millions of dollars on the internet. Ashamed of people who I helped learn to do something the very first time they ever learned how to do it. Ashamed of a giant group of people that are all bragging about how much money that they're making, walking all over their customers all over the internet, not paying attention to what's going on in the marketplace, only paying attention to the next hot strategy, to the next hot deal, to the next launch, to the next thing, to tomorrow when there's a new gateway opening up that you got to get in the next 15 seconds because you're going to get an extra 1% on the 18th level when you join now. And it's like all this stuff, and it's like, and they can't even stay true to the people that loved them for years and years and years. That, my friends, let me tell you something. Let me tell you what that is. I'm not just talking about myself. I've seen it again and again and again. Let me tell you what that is. It's nothing but pathetic, whiny, crybaby, cowardice, nonsense from a group of people that know better. That being said, I've loved my friends. And I've built new friends. And I'm working on building new crowds of people. New and better crowds. Better because they're newer. Better because they're fresh. Better because when the better crowds come, all the old crowds come and everybody hangs out together. Because at the end of the day, let me tell you all something. That it don't matter if you believe or not. That it don't matter if you honor it or not. It doesn't matter if you follow it or not. The truth is still self-evident, and the Messiah, David, is here. It doesn't matter if you stay in your old locked cowardice, if you stay in your old tiny little ways, it doesn't matter how big my crowd is today or how big my crowd is tomorrow, because it matters where it's going. And you're going to see the crowd of the Messiah beginning to grow. Because it's time to start opening up supernatural portals of blessing upon the face of the earth. It's time for the visions and the prophecies and the way that people used to have revelations when angels were appearing on the earth was restored to the earth. It's time that people got over the prideness of their heart and their giant egos and can hear the voice of the Lord God of hosts again. It's time for people to wake up and for them to realize that if we want to survive, all of humanity has got to work together. It's time. And if we don't do it, ain't nobody's going to do it. You know, I said this a long time ago. And I heard this a long time ago. They say, when does God show up? Think about your time in your life when God really showed up for you. Well, usually first to really show up for you, you got to get real humble, because people don't just keep praying like my father used to as a kid. You know, you keep praying all the time, you tend to stay humble. It really doesn't take tons of stuff. It's like you wake up in the morning, roll out of bed, get on your knees and start praying before you go to bed, kneel by the side of your bed and you pray, right? This is twice a day where you're on your knees in front of the Almighty and you're saying, I ain't got nothing, show me the way. Right? The reality is that I've learned that the hard way, right? Staying on your knees, right? This is going to totally help you open up to things in a totally different kind of way. It's just, I'm going to finish this thought here and I'm going to be real quick. Okay? Whether people like it or they don't like it, I'm here. Whether people believe in it or they don't believe in it, I'm still here. Whether people acknowledge it yet or they don't acknowledge it tomorrow or they don't for 6 months, it doesn't matter, because the words of the prophets will be fulfilled. Whether people align in gigantic, exponentially growing crowds of people or not, guess what it's up to? It's not just up to me. See, this is the problem that I've got right now with humanity. That humanity is so prideful that it's very easy for them to believe anything that happened in ancient time. It's very difficult for them to believe anything that happens in a modern time, because Jesus himself said, a wicked and adulterous generation seeketh after a sign. And the reality is, and this is the problem, that when people don't have faith in the first place, the signs and the wonders, they actually slow down and stop. This is actually what causes it. It's not in one church or the other church, it's in all of them. If the Buddhists stop praying and they stop having faith, the miracles go down. If the Christians stop praying and they stop having faith, the miracles go down. If the Islamic people stop praying and they stop having faith, they stop hearing the voice of God because he gets ticked off, and the miracles go down. However, if they believe, then the miracles show up. This is manifestation. Faith is a living, breathing act of manifestation. That's what it is. You believe in something and you believe in something and you believe in something and you stay true to yourself. And then you have enough faith and you have enough submission and humility to understand that even if you don't have the power to do what you want to do alone, you understand you were never alone in the first place. There was never a time in your life when you were actually alone. You were always in this beautiful, evolving story. This never-ending continuum of instruction and grace, and just your ears were too dull to even hear it. You were saying, God, send me an opportunity, and left and right they're being placed in your life and you're ignoring them. You're saying, God, please send me a teacher, and left and right you're seeing the teachers and you're ignoring them. You're saying, God, please send me a prophet, and left and right they appear into your life and you don't hear them. And then their ears are dull of hearing after a time. And their hearts are devoid of understanding. And their eyes aren't open, and their eyes can't see. Yeah, I'm going to tell you one thing. I told people this. Now, there's certain things that are a little bit different than this. Like, for example, I would absolutely love being in an environment where I had tons of money like I used to have again, because I know what to do now. However, let me tell you something. I actually would never go back to the way that I was before for any amount of money. Not all of it. There's parts of it. Like going and having the crowds of people to speak to. I'm a much better speaker and much better communicator now than I used to be. All I need is to build a new crowd. I get way better results with that crowd than I've ever gotten with any other crowd of people that I've had. I just need to build the system and build the crowd again. I know how to do it. And I'm getting there. I've been getting there a little bit slowly, fighting through the discouragement of remanifesting my spouse back into my life, you know, which I'm certain will happen because I'm faithful to myself. And fighting through a lot, fought through a lot, recovered from a lot, had victory over a lot, and now I'm sitting here. And you know what the best part is? For where my mission and my kingdom is right now? The best part is the only place that it's going to go is up. Up and up and up and up and up and up and up. And if you understand that, there'll be a time when it'll be near impossible to get a hold of me. Like it will be literally almost impossible. There'll be a time when the kings of the earth are lined up in waiting lists that stretch out for 3 months, 6 months sometimes to say hello. Sometimes 2 years. There will be a time when, to get my personal attention, it'll be the most rare thing that happens to you in your life. The most rare thing you could encounter in your life after a certain period of time is going to be able to get my personal attention for anything. Because I'm going to keep increasing my sphere of association and increasing my sphere of association and increasing my sphere of association until I am simply surrounded at all times by the most powerful people on earth. And then the most powerful people in other worlds, and then the most powerful people in the universe. I ain't stopping. No, you don't understand. We're going to build a kingdom here, and we're going to take that kingdom to every country. We're going to take that kingdom to every state. We're going to take this kingdom to every territory, to every city, to every land. And every land on the face of the earth is going to have the message of freedom, of liberty, and of prosperity. And the very nature of people's behavior is going to change all over the face of the earth. Because people are going to wake up and they're not going to be able to stay stuck in these old patterns of thinking they live in this tiny box that doesn't really exist in the universe. They're going to be in a boxless environment, able to do things that people today, it's beyond our imagination what people are going to be able to do in the future. Like you've seen movies about it, but even the movies that you've seen about it, they're not even remotely close to how weird the earth is going to be. And when people wake up and they see all the energy going on around them, and they see the Old Testament stories repeating, and they see all the prophecies happening that they've read about. See, people have read about prophecies their entire life. They've read about these stories in ancient Jerusalem where 5 people put 100 people to flight and all this stuff, or whatever it says. You read Leviticus 26 or Deuteronomy 28 or whatever, right? I think it's 5 of you shall chase 100 and 10 of you shall put 10,000 to flight, or something like that. Or 100 shall you put 10, 5 of you shall chase 100 and 100 of you shall put 10,000 to flight, right? So it's like, people have heard these stories. But what they don't actually understand is that all that stuff is still happening right in front of their eyes, and they can't see it because they're blinded. What they can't see is they can't see that all the prophecies and all the blessings always get fulfilled. Whether they want them to get fulfilled or not, they happen 100% of the time. What they don't understand yet is they don't yet understand that if humanity wants to reach for the stars, we got to get down to the earth first. And we're not connected. We're not connected to our food. We're not connected to our water. We're not connected to the jobs that we're in. We're just in them because we're in them. We're just in this society that, like, a good giant chunk of this stuff that we do today is going to be replaced in like 5 or 10 years. Another good chunk will be replaced in 25 years. Another good chunk will be replaced in 50. And then in 50 years, where are people going to be? Or is there going to be any left? Or is it going to be like giant skyscrapers in the Fifth Element where you've got to go up like 4,000 levels to get above the smog and breathe? There's real problems on the earth right now. I'll tell you some massive problems that we've got on the earth. Things people are ignoring or they think is funny that'll destroy society, that a lot of people are concerned about, but they're afraid to speak up. Because every time they speak up about it, society lashes out at them. And society has gotten too pussy. Society has gotten so weenie and pathetic and wussy over the last while that you can't even stand up for yourself anymore. That a girly man all of a sudden is getting a sex change to not be a man sometimes now. In large frequencies. We got this giant movement going on right now that's just the most ridiculous thing anybody have ever. It's absurd, right? Where people, like society right now, how loyal is society really today? How loyal are they? That's my question. This is where I'm going to leave you off, right? And I'll continue this message maybe in a few days, right? How loyal is society right now? How loyal is it? If you really look at where society's at, when I was a kid, we were going and traveling down to Hawaii, my dad and I. And we were driving on the road, and we're in this dirt road and our tires go flat, like all of them at the same time. I think it was like somebody put tacks in the road. I mean, it was like all at once. We're going to Hawaii and like the road's closed and we have to go down this dirt road because we're not going to make the airport. And my dad's all stressed out because the family didn't really have a lot of money and our tires go flat, right? So this is like back in the day, like before cell phones, I think, right? I'm a young kid. We were going to Kauai, I think is where we were going. Could have been Oahu, though, that time. And anyways, we're getting ready to go this vacation of Hawaii, and we're driving down. Then my dad gets in a car, hitchhikes, and we all stay waiting in the car with, like, Mom or something like that while my dad goes. And so we're all protecting Mom, of course, and Mom's protecting us, out in the middle of, like, in the middle of nowhere with a bunch of kids on a road. And then this guy my dad hitchhikes with drives, my dad drives in and he gets to a phone and makes a phone call to Randy Olson, who is one of his best friends growing up in Alaska. Randy picks up the phone. It's like midnight or something like this. Wakes up in the middle of the night, probably takes some caffeine pills or something like that, I don't know, and starts driving with his big SUV or whatever at midnight, 4 hours out, right? Like, he meets us halfway there and then takes us the majority or the rest of the way down to Anchorage, Alaska. And then we're in Hawaii. We're enjoying this down there. And I didn't really think anything of it. But then one day, I'm sitting there with my dad, and this is before there was answering machines or anything. It was like maybe 1988 or something. And we're sitting there, and the phone rings. And my dad jumps out of dinner, goes and picks up the phone, says, hello? And I was kind of looking at him because I was like, man, if this was my house, I'd just turn off the phone. That's what I was thinking. I was like 8 years old. I was thinking that. I was like, I wouldn't do that. Really funny how kids are, aren't it? And then he was like, Dad, it's dinner time. Why don't you just turn the phone off? Now, a lot of people, they'd say, yeah, why didn't you turn the phone off? And this is the way modern society is. Their phones are off. Their hearts are off. You know what my dad said? My dad said, hear me out here. What if Randy was giving us a call and he was about to go on a family vacation and his car broke down, Dave? You remember that trip to Hawaii where he drove up in the middle of the night and got us, saved our family vacation that we saved for all year long, that we would have wasted all that money for if we didn't make it down? And I was like, yeah, I remember. He says, okay. So I'm going to get up and answer the phone. Because in America, people used to love people, and I want to stay that way. Isn't it fascinating how times have changed? I mean, there's loyal people like, nobody's business in America today. There's people that talk to each other. There's people that are very friendly. But the love of our nation has been waxing cold for a very long time. And when the love waxes cold to a certain level, it starts getting dangerous for everyone, because there's a vast majority of society that doesn't, they just stop caring about everything. And why does love wax cold in people? Love waxes cold in people for one reason and one reason only. And that is because of the presence of sin in society. And sin can't be gotten rid of without people voluntarily changing, because otherwise it's just force. You can't force people to do what you want. People won't do it. You know what I mean? You can't force people to stop sleeping around and cheating on their spouses. You can't force people to start being loyal. You can't force people to focus on one thing. You can't force people to do anything. God can force people if he wants. He doesn't. Why doesn't he do it? Like, it would seem as if, it would seem as if he did something, I'll keep my voice down because people are sleeping. It seems like if he did something that, it would really make a big difference. And that is, why didn't he just make everybody do it? I've had a lot of people say that. Like, we got this giant socialist movement that, like, wants to force everybody, like Bernie Sanders and whatever. And I love Bernie Sanders and whatever. I think that he looks like to me like he wants to help people and that he just doesn't understand what he's talking about. He understands what he's talking about, but I mean, he's like, talking about things like, the edifying the communist parties in the world and calling it the revolution and stuff. And it's like, this is not a revolution. I'm walking up to my place here. So it's like, No, I'll just stay out here for a second. So it's like, people want to force people to do what they want. And here's what we got to do. If you and me want to create nothing less than heaven on earth, nothing less, until we get there, like a literal heaven on the earth. I got a friend that wants to restore the earth to how it was in the Garden of Eden. He's had that vision to do that his whole life. And so have I, to be honest with you. I've always wanted to do that too. And he's got technology, for example, to clean up the water and, all sorts of stuff like this. But if you and I, if we want to restore the earth to a pure state full of grace and love, where there's peace, where there's no fighting, we're not going to do it through communism. We're not going to do it through modern capitalism, the way that it is now. Capitalism is better than communism, right? But this is not, just these two things are not going to do it. Socialism isn't going to do it. Communism isn't going to do it. Capitalism by itself isn't going to do it. The Democrats by themselves aren't going to do it. The Republicans by themselves aren't going to do it. If we want to restore the earth to peace, there's one way to do it. And it's not our way. It's God's way. Because He built the world. He was there when you were in the womb. He was there building you. When you came out of the womb, He was there maintaining you. He designed and He orchestrated the design of the earth and the design of the stars. And how are you going to know God's way? You're going to know God's way because God is going to send prophets in your life. Real prophets is what He's going to send. And when a prophet speaks in the name of the Lord, you should listen and check what they say. And that's the only way that today's people are going to know what to do. Because the Lord God of hosts is revealing it to His chosen, select people that He raised up from the time of the day. Right? And in order to do that, in order to get anywhere from that, you and me, we got to listen. We got to listen. We got to listen to each other. Because in the last days, God is going to pour out His Spirit upon all flesh, and your sons and your daughters will prophesy, and your old men will dream dreams. And the reason He's going to do that is because we're all reading this book. And the book is like a sealed book. Like nobody understands it. Like the eyes of the prophets have been closed. Like the seers don't speak. And people are running to and fro, and they can read this, and they don't even have the ability to truly understand what it means. How do you know that? You say, well, I was, there's a long time when I fell away from the church I'm in, right? And I had this sure witness of the way things were when I was in my church. And then what happened so I had this sure witness, right? It was like, I knew what was there. And then I fell away, and then I was going to, for example, a bunch of evangelical churches and stuff. There's nothing wrong with the evangelical churches. They're just, they don't really have real prophetic direction. They don't. There's little prophets in there and stuff. They don't have any new revelations. They don't do what Isaiah did. They can't write something like Isaiah did. You know what I mean? In modern Christianity, it's just not like this. And in my opinion, that's like half of a prophet. You know what I mean? So you go in there and like, I used to go and I'd be like, what happens after we die? Because I was used to my whole life having a real answer for that question. And then, you know, they'd say something like, well, you go to be with Jesus, right? It's like, well, what does that mean? What actually happens? It's like, well, you get resurrected. They didn't know whether there's a resurrection or whether there's people or spirit. The reality is that nobody knew. They just all guessed different things. And some of the pastors and stuff, they would have some sort of longer answer to that question. They would say it's beyond our imagination. But the reality is they don't know. And then you got people like the Jehovah's Witnesses and the you know, other faiths out there that are just like, we're talking Christianity, where it's like they have no answers to these questions. None. And the answers that we really have, the only place they actually even sound like they're really in a lot of detail is if you go study something like Buddhism, or, you know, even the old Egyptians, they used to have the Book of the Dead and everything like this, where they actually had very, 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 very detailed analyses of what happened to people when they were dead. Whether or not those were accurate, they actually had answers to that question. And so people can't, like, when it comes to questions about life, questions about like, why are we really all here? It's like the answer to that question is something like, we're all here to worship God, you know, which in some manner is true. You know, we're all here to give God glory. Right? We're all here to give God glory. This is a fundamental truth, right? So I'm not discounting this or anything like that. We're all here to give God glory in a fundamental kind of way in society and in life and in our spirits and in heaven and all this stuff. But why did he make us in the first place? The only thing that even hints at why God made anything, it never explains it. It just says he made it. There's no explanation for why God made anything. There's no explanation for what happens to people really when they die. You know, again, like Buddhism and stuff like that has more clear answers than most people. You know what I mean? There is some in some of the mystical traditions, like the Kabbalah and, you know, all this stuff. There's all this mystical knowledge about what happens. And usually the knowledge about what happens when people die comes from mystics. It doesn't come from biblical teaching generally, because the Bible is not very clear about it at all. It's clear that there's a resurrection. It's clear that people get cast into hell, and it's clear that there's a heaven, and that people have physical bodies when they're resurrected in heaven, and all this stuff is actually very clear in the Bible. But as far as why there's a judgment, why people have to get cast out, like, if people just say, well, you know, it's because people get cast into hell forever and ever and ever because they don't accept Jesus, and this is the only explanation they have. And then the Jews, they say it's because the people transgress, you know, so they're very sinful. For example, they get cast out, there's a judgment and all this stuff. There's a judgment and there's a resurrection, and there's, you know, there's lots of different philosophies on it. There's lots of different philosophies on it out there. The reality is that people don't have answers to basic questions about the nature of our existence because they are not heeding the prophets. It's not because the answers aren't there. It's because God is sending the prophets. And in a modern society, when he sends them, society looks at them and they cast them out. And they say, oh, you know, they're nuts. You know what I mean? Like, I see the way people reacted, for example, to Joseph Smith, and it's like, oh yeah, right. Angels appeared to him and gave him the plates. And then they took him back into heaven, and nobody ever saw them. It's like, well, first of all, no, some people did see them. And, you know, this is an example of a modern prophet, right? But, like, people did see those plates. They saw the angels. They saw angels come and minister and give other things, and those people never denied that stuff, even when their life was in danger. They never denied it. And when they were threatened on the streets brutally and getting beaten up and kicked after they left the church and stuff, they never denied it. They never denied it. And then there was stuff where, like, people, like, hundreds of people saw angels on the top of the Kirtland Temple and all sorts of weird celestial phenomenon and stuff like this. And even people today, they look back and they're like, man, I wish I was around that stuff. Like, I just, I just don't know what that would be like, because even in my church, stuff like that's not happening now. There's prophets and they're teaching, and but it's like there's no new revelation, and there's new revelation in the sense they're guiding the church or whatever, but it's not like angels are appearing and giving golden plates to people, and people are like translating things like with weird objects, and like receiving complex answers to how the universe works and stuff like this on a massive scale. It's actually not. It's not the same thing that's happening today that was happening before. But people, they take that, like for example, the prophet Joseph Smith, and what do? They killed him in Carthage jail. This is how his life ended. His life ended like a lot of the Old Testament prophets' lives ended. Because he spoke the truth, and they spoke the truth, and the people, they reviled against him. There's a great problem and a great sin in society that exists for not listening to the messengers that God sends into our lives. And the karma gets more severe as time goes on. And I want you to think about something for a second. I want you to think about Noah. What were people doing before the flood came? What were they doing? They were eating, they were drinking, they were marrying, they were giving in marriage. What else were they doing? They were saying, eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die, right? Or the earth's going to be here like this forever. We can just do whatever we want. And this guy is so retarded. Look how stupid he looks. Look how stupid Noah looks. That's what they're saying. I mean, what an idiot. He's building this giant ark. There's not even rain, right? He's been working on it for years. This thing's gigantic. It's like he took all his money and he put it into this wood to buy this, whatever. I mean, however, he's built. He probably sawed the trees down himself. He was Noah. All right. And then all of a sudden, at the last possible second, God says, I've had enough. Noah, get into the ark. He warns his friends a final time. They're like, he goes into the ark, chills out maybe for a day or two, then all of a sudden, rain starts to fall. And then, when the waters of life are drowning people, they cry out and they say, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me what was going to come? And God, weeping, looks down and says, I did. His name was Noah. They're like, that guy that was building that ark all these years, and God's like, yeah, he was there for you. Because I loved you so much that I put him through all that for you. But because he's listening, he's okay. And now none of you are okay. It's serious. I know what I'm doing. Please listen, is what he says. Maybe then you try again. The point is this. I've been talking for a long time tonight. I'm going to go inside. I got some stuff to do here. Hey, little dog. Hey, little dog. I've been talking for a long time tonight, so I want you to know how much I care about you and how deeply you inspire me. I think that there's nobody on earth that's made just... We're fearfully and wonderfully made, are we not? Sorry. Like, there's nobody on earth that can do the things that you have the ability in your personal life to do when you get your heart and your mind right. Same's true for me. There's nothing that you can't do. When you get your higher power by your side, that's when there's really nothing you can't do. And I want you to know that if you're listening to this audio, that, oh, hey. I want you to know that if you're listening to this audio, right, you're cared about. That if you're listening to this audio, you're loved. That if you're hearing the sound of my voice, I'm thinking about you. That if you're resonating with my messages, you should reach out to me and ask how you can help. Because for a long time, people have prayed the Lord's Prayer, and they've said, "Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Thy kingdom come." Pray that the kingdom of God might come. And people are expecting that, all that the kingdom of God is that comes is Jesus comes back and he just fixes everything. We're not supposed to do anything until he shows up. Not what everybody thinks. Most people don't think that. That'd be greatly irresponsible to think that. And I think Christians are very generally responsible, in particular. But if we really want something big to happen in the world, like something radical and something life-changing and something that just shakes our destiny because it's so beautiful, then it's time to actually create the kingdom. Together we could do it. You know that, right? A few people got together in Jekyll Island, for example, and they did something bad. A few people got together and they said, how can we take over the banking system and control everyone and blah, 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 blah. And they did that. What if we did the same thing? And we sat down in a room and we said, how can we build a real kingdom without end of years? That lasts on and stretches on forever and ever and ever and ever throughout all space and all time. You hit me up at facebook.com/the Messiah David. It's my personal profile. Say hello. This is a little bit of a rambly message, and I hope that this helped you see where we're going. And it's not just this. This is just the beginning. It's just the beginning, and that's all that it is. I was walking for 2 hours tonight. My legs are tired. I'm going to go stretch. What are you going to do? Talk later. Oh, and facebook.com/the Messiah David. Vision is what? It is to create radiance, peace, love, blessing, wholeness, righteousness, honor, love, and power. Hope you had a good night. Love you.